Okay everyone, recently I've been in the mood for some visual novels, and I thought instead of doing a series, I'd take a more in-depth analysis on one. Also, I need to finish that Danganronpa the 3 game. It's been like 2 years, whatever. So there's a visual novel I read on Valentine's Day a year back. Not the bird one, also not the tank one. I was reading through Doki Doki Literature Club, or after that I was pretty much forced to play a different game. Now this isn't the first instance of the game I've had, but through the Steam Store actually, new releases. I guess it was sort of increasing in popularity at the time, before the huge blowout, and I noticed the tags actually of the game having horror. Now, I don't know if you've seen the game before. It doesn't look all that horrifying, with all the pink bubbles, cute anime girls. My first thought was that I'd like to get my first reaction to the game, sort of like what I did with Undertale, and then I realized, oh wait, I'm just gonna accept my fate if I see him. What's that? Nope. I'm done. I'm done. I'm bad with horror, so I ended up not playing the game and just watching someone else play it, because I'm a scaredy cat, and honestly, kinda regret it. With the fact that it was free and probably a lot of people's first inclusion is such a bait and switch, especially when there's been visual novels like it already, like Kimi to Kanojo no Koi. But I'm digressing. DDLC is a game created by Dan Salvato, who's worked on many things actually, like Melee's 20XX, Project M. Hell, he even made FrankerFaceZ, the Twitch emote site. So he's got a lot of reach in some communities. But it wasn't just Dan. There was also Satchely, who made the character portraits in the official release, and Delinquent, who made the backgrounds. So for the most part, it seems like a normal school dating sim visual novel sort of deal, where you join a literature club in high school with a childhood friends, the shy and sophisticated Yuri, the cold but loving Natsuki, and the club president Monika. Whatever. And like many other visual novels where you get to choose which girl you like by the choices you make, with either what you say and the words you choose through the poem minigames. But if you read through that's part of the setup. Before you even start the game, you can catch a glimpse of what's to come on the story page actually. And it reads, "Hi, Monika here. Welcome to the Literature Club. It's always been a dream of mine to make something special out of the things I love. Now that you're a club member, you can help me make that dream come true in this cute game. Every day is full of chit-chat and fun activities with all of my adorable and unique club members. Sayori, the youthful bundle of sunshine who values happiness the most. Natsuki, the deceiving cute girl who packs an assertive punch. Yuri, the timid and mysterious one who finds comfort in the world of books. And of course Monika, the leader of the club. That's me. I'm super excited for you to make friends with everyone and help the Literature Club become an intimate place for all my members. But I can tell already that you're a sweetheart. Will you promise to spend the most time with me?" Pretty much confirming from the get-go that she is aware. Now, most people, probably everyone actually, would write this off as just a QT description for the game. But in hindsight, when Monika even herself brings it up, it really gives the game more depth. It's like the game has farther reach than the boundaries of itself. Hell, even Monika has her own Twitter, which was also made in February 2016, a whole year before the game's release, with her even tweeting things a few months before the game's even out. There are 4 main acts we'll be going through, and for the sake of completion we'll go through each of the differences in Act 1, 2, and 4. Act 3 has just... never mind. Act 1 starts off as any typical visual novel of the genre, with being introduced by the bland protagonist with no goal and all the potential of interest. And oh look, they're looking for a club member. If only there was someone... we're pretty much forced into it. And while they're all eating cupcakes, they bring up poems. And conveniently, Natsuki's left one of her poems. And that gets to thinking, maybe everyone should write their own poems, because this is a literature club. We're not just gonna sit around reading books all the time, we gotta do something else. But the poems are a pretty ingenious inclusion to the game as a sort of indicator of how the characters are doing at the time, as well as a way to look deeper into each character's thoughts and what they're like. And while the minigame is simple in execution, it really helps deepen each of them, picking up how each of them write and how they act show through their poem writings, and can later be used to choose which words would be used in the minigames. Choosing the words best suited for each girl will be the game's way of determining who you'll spend the following day with. Sayori has a more gentle vocabulary, a lot more to do with emotions, relationships, and experiences. Natsuki likes simple, more cute words, and Yuri definitely has the biggest vocabulary of the bunch. She likes more deeper and more nuanced words, and Monika gets nothing. If you somehow manage to get all the words correct for a certain person in Act 2, Monika may or may not call you out. A nice subtle difference they had for each of the poem readings for each character is the music that plays. It's all the same track, but different instruments being added in based off the character. Sayori has a ukulele, Monika is just the piano, Natsuki has the xylophone and the recorder, Yuri has a harp and a cello. So let's finally start and get through each of the paths, starting with Sayori. So if you were playing to the character, I feel like the MC would be more inclined to stick to Sayori for the first few days of joining the club, so we'll start with her. And honestly, I don't know if it's just because of their relationship and how close they are, but the protag's kind of an asshole. So with the protag here having no interest in literature in the first place, he seems already at a loss on his second day of being in the club, so he opts to sleep in. Yay, really gonna get some friends out of this, doing things like that, sleeping at a desk. But oh, look, Monika and Sayori are having a conversation. They're talking about the festival, the school festival that's coming up. And that's what our story will mostly be about for the next few days. It involves finding markers. Sayori bumps her head. They're looking for markers, while MC here reminisces about their childhood. Oh fuck, that doesn't go first. Sayori takes notice of Protag sleeping in and asks what the fuck. And then Protag talks about how unkept Sayori looks and how she doesn't have a boyfriend. About how her buttons aren't aligned right, her color isn't tidy, and she has toothpaste on her. Her bow is crooked, which is also, I guess, true. And on her character model, Sayori's buttons aren't aligned right. It's a nice subtle detail. And the rest of the days are filled with shenanigans. So we're done. So before we get ahead of ourselves here and get pushed into Act 2, we gotta rewind. Let's hang out with Natsuki. Natsuki starts off with her looking for a manga in the closet. It's pretty easy for them to connect, and Natsuki shares one with him. Second day rolls around and Monika decides to put her collection on the top shelf, which is a really good choice. The smallest one in the club, Natsuki being her stubborn self, decides she can do it herself, and falls, creasing one of the book pages. And this is where we get the dere part of her swoon. A little hint of her dere part of the swoon, and she cries, confessing that she's actually having a hard day. Third day rolls around, and it's the same third day as everyone else because of shenanigans. Oh, but hey, this time we're actually gonna hang out during the weekend. Since the festival is coming around, we had to choose which person we want to hang out with. So let's go for Natsuki, because it'd be weird to hang out with someone else this far into it. So Natsuki's job is to make cupcakes. So she comes over to Proteg's house and they both make cupcakes together and nothing else. Well, alright, we're done. Okay, let's go to Yuri now. Yuri's path starts off with just a simple glance at each other. Proteg notices that Yuri's reading the book that she herself bought for him, obviously trying to refamiliarize herself with the book, on the off chance that he actually reads it. In the end, they just decide to read it together. I guess Natsuki's and Yuri's paths are somewhat similar, with both having to do with books. Oh wait, it's a literature club, that's right. Second day rolls around, Yuri decides to make some tea. It's nice. They both go to fill up a kettle and Monika asks what they're up to. Yuri says to mind her own business. Then they eat chocolate. Third day, weekend. So Yuri comes over and they make decorations. Oh, that's a pretty cool life. They make decorations and nothing else. And now it's Monika. No, never mind. Overall pretty standard, choosing either Natsuki or Yuri's both involve reading a certain book, and both clash on their poems and what they think is a better method of writing. If you stay on a more neutral path, they seem more open and understanding of each other's differences. So maybe MC here shouldn't even be here to begin with. It seems better off without him. And now it's festival time. It's time for each of the different paths to come into one. Time for fun with festivities and poem sharing. And then Act 2. We're thrust out of the game and it looks like all our saves are corrupted. And if it wasn't already apparent, something seems amiss. Now this opening act does something pretty cool. The game corrects itself to a point where it's like they never existed in the first place. Oh, and Monika's just there. And since Sayori's not in the game anymore, there will be subtle changes in the story and how we inevitably reach the literature club with Monika introducing us to it and Yuri being the vice president instead. The rest of the story tries to go back to normal with some glitches here and there. The poems are the same, where you choose the words, and so it seems like someone's messing with things behind the scenes. It also seems like they're messing with the characters themselves. Sayori had her depression amplified, while Natsuki had her rather rash language, cruelty, with maybe less well-known differences involving family. Yuri had her obsessive personality. Oh, but Monika's just fine. Oh, I wonder who it could be. Not like we're getting hints or anything. Nope. There's actually a lot of unique glitches that's still surprising me, even while recording it. So I'll give a link to the wiki to show off all the different glitches that you could find through Act 2. So it's poem time again, but it seems like Yuri has her own plans and forces players down her path no matter what words you choose. If you chose Natsuki's words the first time around, you're treated with a unique jump scare, which I guess is cool if you're into that. Choosing Yuri's both timed around, you also get a different jump scare, so you just can't get away, can you? So the story chugs along until it's Friday and Yuri wants to spend some alone time with you, forces everyone out. Now it's just you and her. Her words cut deep and you get a nice message that reads, "Have a nice weekend," in your files. You then proceed to have a nice intimate weekends in the comfort of your club room. Oh, it's festival time, farther than we got last time, and oh yeah, that happens. Natsuki throws up what little food she has in her stomach and runs away. Oh, and surprise, surprise, Monika deletes everything. And you're treated with a nice CG of your one and only waifu, where you'll spend eternity together forever. Monika reveals everything to how she knew from the start, what she did, why, face to face with the mastermind behind it all. She likes to talk about her undying and unconditional love for you, the player, without having any knowledge of you. Is this her last plan to try and get herself out of the game? By seducing you? Maybe she's really in love with you. Or maybe the idea of you, a person that knows as much, if not much more, than she does about the game. Her only hope of escaping. She reveals some pretty cool things too, like if you're playing on Steam, the name you put on your computer. Oh, and she has a cool secret to show you if you're recording. All in all, I guess it's a good way to spend all eternity. She got some nice eyes to look at, and the things she talks about are pretty neat. Tells you about her Twitter, and oh, I deleted her. Well, I didn't say it, but that was Act 3, and now it's time for the final act, where instead of Sayori being gone from the game, it seems as though Monika is gone, and the game seems to be running a lot smoother for some reason. It's been forever since we've seen Sayori, and it looks like she's taken the role as club president now that certain someone's gone, and she now knows everything that has happened. Oh, most people here would get the normal ending. You get the ending where Sayori deletes everything and Monika somehow comes back to delete her and what remains of the game. It's actually a pretty big reveal and the last shock of the game, since it turns out that it's not just Monika who had the power, but actually just anyone who's in the club president role, meaning that they all potentially have sentience. But us being fancy completion boys, we got all the CGs and are treated with a lot nicer of an ending, with Sayori thanking you for getting to know and become friends with everyone before saying her final farewells. There's also a unique letter at the end of the game with Dan himself saying, "To the special player who achieved this special ending. For years I have been enamored by the ability of visual novels, and games in general, to tell stories in ways not possible using traditional media. Doki Doki Literature Club is my love letter to that. Games are an interactive art. Some let you explore new worlds, some challenge your mind in brand new ways. Some make you feel like a hero or a friend. Even when life is hard on you, some games are just plain fun, and that's okay too. Everyone likes different kind of games. People who enjoy dating sims may have heightened empathy for fictional characters, or they might be experiencing feelings that life has not been kind enough to offer to them. If they are enjoying themselves, then that's all that matters. That goes for shooting games, casual games, sandbox games, anything. Preferences are preferences, and our differences are the reason we have a thriving video game industry. My own favorite games have always been ones that challenge the status quo. Even if not a masterpiece, any game that attempts something wildly different may earn a special place in my heart. Anything that further pushes the limitless bounds of interactive media. I extend my true gratitude to all those who have taken the time to achieve full completion. I hope you enjoyed playing it as much as I enjoyed making it. Thank you for being part of my literature club. Love, Dan Salvato." So I can see why it got so popular. The known general knowledge of the visual novel scene already had a rap of being a real cliche pseudo-dating simulator, so having the idea and flipping it on its head and being so readily available was a great idea. Unfortunately, there seems to be a catch-22. No matter how much you want to break the fourth wall, there's still rules to visual novels. You can't just have Monika break through your computer, as much as some people would want that to happen. There's also the replayability of this, and I guess just in visual novels in general, where the experience is at the best during your first playthrough, and despite there being new things that you could experience, it's still overall the same experience. There's definitely some ideas that could have been cool that weren't implemented, like adding Sayori back in Act 2, or adding everyone back in Act 3. They did play around with the idea a little at the very beginning to get a early ending, and during the end where you add Monika back during Act 4. Now I'm not sure where to put these, so I'm just going to talk about some things that I thought were pretty cool about the game. There's little hints you get through Act 1, like where Yuri talks about how authors take the expectation of the reader and flips it over, and more subtly with Natsuki's manga, and when Yuri literally says something's being foreshadowed. The fact as soon as you start the game and you notice each of the characters' models, that Monika is already the odd one out with red tips on her shoes instead of the blue and the black thigh highs. And even her name, Monika, which all the other characters have a more Japanese origin name. Also, they all end in I except for Monika. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but you know, there's a lot of differences there. The build up when you get to Sayori's house first time around, with it falling short and being a fake out, and then having the second time come around, and having the atmosphere being a lot more tense due to the fact that you know that it's happening. The portrayal of Sayori's depression overall seems fairly realistic, with the idea that getting what you wanted wouldn't cure you. In Act 2, the play Monika's going through, behind the scenes, in the files, the poem Natsuki gives you, saying that she realizes something is off with Yuri, is begging for help, therefore sort of proving that they're at least somewhat sentient to things around them. Alright, I think I'm done. The reception for the game was really well received, and the community, although a lot smaller, is still thriving. There's still many different pieces of fan art, fan fictions, even mods still being created and updated. I myself still check out some of the mods like Monika After Story and Just Yuri that have been worked on extensively. They're both a take on Act 3, with the first bringing Monika back after the end of the game for a more bigger expansion of what happens in Act 3, and the other being the same but with Yuri instead. There's also the more traditional visual novel types like the Purist Mod, which takes everything out of the second, third, fourth act, just purely focuses on the first and have it just be a normal visual novel. So despite the game coming out 2 years ago, there's still a dedicated fan base for the thing. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, Project Libitina wasn't able to meet that 2018 mark they set through the text in Monika's character file. It had gotten a lot of hype through people finding out the details through the files of each character, and even the extra backgrounds created and uploaded on delinquent DeviantArt to even a site made specifically for the project. Who knows what could be delaying it? Maybe speedrunning Yoshi's story. Who knows what he has in store, but I'm glad I was able to experience it. Finding out everything that Dan himself has worked on in the past is really impressive, that I myself have used in the past, and honestly pretty praiseworthy. The story in the first act was already good enough to just be a clear-cut standard visual novel, where it slowly delved into the different characters' faults that it had set up, but I'm glad it came with a twist and really challenged and threw the idea of visual novels out the window. So I hope you enjoyed that look back on a very interesting visual novel. The game definitely challenged the direction some visual novels had gone down, and hopefully changed some people's perspectives of them, and hopefully trying out some more, maybe even creating their own with their own ideas. If you yourself haven't checked it out already, I'd highly recommend it, if that wasn't already obvious. Though if you're new to visual novels in general, you might not be used to how long these are. The game itself is fairly short for visual novel standards, but just like treat visual novels as just that, a visual novel, and just be patient like you're reading any other book. I'm sure the club would appreciate it, even though it kind of spoiled everything that happens. Maybe I should make a spoiler-free video. The game's been out for 2 years, whatever. Who cares? Who hasn't seen, or who doesn't know about this game? Let's be real. Anyways, it's been a blast rooting through it again and seeing what had become of it so far. Thank you for sticking around and watching. I'd love to try some more types of videos like this. This is actually my first time actually trying one out like it, and I enjoyed it. It was a nice change of pace. Now for something I may or may not regret. Every day I imagine a future where I could be with you. There's a pen that'll write a poem of me and you. The air flows down into a dark puddle. Just move your hand right away into his heart. But in this world of infinite choices, what will it take just to find that special day? What will it take just to find that special day? Have I found everybody a fun assignment to do today? When you're here, everything that we do is fun for them anyway. When I can't even read my own feelings, what good are words when a smile says it all? And if this world won't write me an ending, what will it take just for me to have it all? Does my pen only write better words for those who are dear to me? Is it love if I take you, or is it love if I set you free? The air flows down into a dark puddle. How can I write love into reality if I can't hear the sound of your heartbeat? What do you call love in your